So, Hare Krishna to all the devotees. Welcome to our Women's Day special, where we've been discovering the glories of women from our scriptures, from Vedic culture, how women were in exalted positions, and what wonderful devotees they were of the Lord, how they were um, well versed in scriptures, although they may not have had a formal education. So they learned the ins and outs of dharmic life from their mothers, from their father, from their husband later on. And today we're going to discover the glorious mood of the Nagapatnis, the wives of Kaliya. So we're going to go into Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 10. But before that, we will set the background as to how the Nagapatnis pray to the Lord to protect their husband, to spare him his life. Sometimes, even when we are practicing Krishna consciousness, one or the other family member may object. Sometimes they may not be interested at all. And therefore, it is almost as if two people are living under the same roof but are following a different life path, although they are in close physical proximity to each other. So in this case, the Nagapatnis demonstrate to us how they are glorious devotees of the Lord, but at the same time, they are always concerned about their husband, Kaliya. No matter how worse the situation may be, how abominable the spouse may be or a family member may be, a woman's duty is to always serve the husband. Even if the husband is envious of the Lord, even if the husband may be an atheist, even if the husband may be a non-believer, the woman's role is to always be that guiding light where possible. Within a marriage, a woman holds a very influential role, position. Prabhupada says a woman has the ability to influence the husband, influence the children, to walk the right path, to walk the dharmic path. Sometimes, every now and then, some of the men may get lost. And Prabhupada says, because women are very, very intelligent, they can use their intelligence to somehow or the other bring everybody on the right path. And when we dive in today's pastime, we will recognize how much the Nagapatnis actually understood this about their role, about how to become dependent on the Lord, about how to ask the Lord to cast his merciful glance upon their husband. So the backdrop to today's pastime is Lord Krishna, along with his young friends, are playing, and the boys are very thirsty, and there is this lake off of the Kalindi river or the Yamuna river. which is inhabited by the serpent Kalia. In the process of living in that lake, Kalia polluted that lake with poison. So we're going to go into the 16th chapter of the 10th canto. If you want the history of how Kalia actually occupied that lake, you have to go to the 17th chapter. Just to briefly tell you, Kalia and Garuda had an altercation when Kalia, along with all of the other serpent families, used to live in a place called the Ramanaka Islands. I think somewhere I read that this is the current day Mauritius. So there was some agreement between the serpents and Garuda that they would feed Garuda one of their own. They would sacrifice one of their own for Garuda, and somehow Kalia would improperly consume what was offered to Garuda himself. So there was an altercation, a fight between Garuda and Kalia. At that time, Garuda, being very, very powerful servant of the Lord, attacks Kalia, and Kalia comes and takes shelter in this Yamuna river, in this lake off of the Yamuna river. Because previously, Garuda was actually cursed by Shaubari Rishi, who was doing tapas underwater in the Yamuna river. And the fishes complained that Garuda is constantly feeding on them. And therefore, Shaubari Rishi says, "You're disturbing the fish, you're disturbing me. I curse you. If you ever come here, you will have to give up your life." So somehow or the other, Kalia seemed to be aware of this pastime, and therefore he comes and takes shelter in this particular lake off of the Yamuna river. Now, when you don't have any natural enemies, then your ego will grow, the number of heads will grow, because you begin to think you are the master, you've conquered everything. Nobody's there to threaten your power, to usurp your power, and therefore you begin to abuse your power. This is the nature of an envious person. So that is what happened to Kalia. Filled with envy and anger and greed, he emitted poison. He was so powerful that there would be poisonous fumes coming from the lake. And any bird that would fly over this lake would simply drop dead. And there was no vegetation in and around the lake, because even the plants and trees could not survive because of the poisonous water, except for one Kadamba tree. Remind me to show you the Kadamba tree that still exists in Vrindavan today. At the end of the class, we can see pictures. So the boys were playing, they were thirsty, and they did not know that these waters were poisonous. So naturally, they took a sip of the water, and immediately all the boys just fell dead. They just lost their lives. Krishna, seeing that all his friends had apparently dropped unconscious, he simply casts his merciful glance upon them and revives them back to life. And Krishna was thinking, this Yamuna water, this Vraja Bhumi is meant for my devotees. Since this lake has been polluted by someone who is not my devotee, it's my duty to clean the lake up. So the Lord climbs onto the top of the Kadamba tree, which is very tall, and prepared himself for this upcoming battle. So Shukadev Goswami is telling Parikshit Maharaj what Krishna did. What did Kanhaiya do? He tightened his belt, he slapped his arms, he adjusted his hair, and then with a great flourish jumps into the poisonous waters. And when the Lord landed in the lake with a great flourish, Shukadev Goswami says, the Lord's entrance was so powerful that water flooded all the surrounding lands. That was the force of the Lord's entrance into the lake. It caused the lake to overflow on all sides, showing how powerful the Lord was, although he was just a 6-year-old boy at that time. So Krishna begins playing in the lake, swimming around, doing some majestic movements in the water. And Kaliya heard the disturbance, and he was thinking, who has come here? Who has intruded upon my property? Somebody was trespassing, and he could not tolerate the idea of someone else coming there. Therefore, he comes to the surface, and there is a beautiful description of what does Kaliya see? Just like the Brahmana's wives, when they ran into the forest, what do they see Krishna doing? How beautiful he's looking. He's leaning one of his arms very casually on another friend's shoulder, and with the other arm he is twirling a lotus. So Shukadev Goswami describes what Kaliya see. Krishna, who's already in the water, was dressed in yellow silken garments, looking very delicate. His attractive body was shining, was glowing like a white cloud. His chest had the mark of Srivatsa. His face was resplendent with a beautiful smile, and his feet was resembling a budding lotus flower. And the Lord was playing in the water. And so Kaliya begins to attack the Lord. He tries to bite the Lord, and then he tries to wrap the Lord up in his coil. By then, the boys became very worried. When they saw Krishna wrapped up in the coils of this huge monster, it's like they were about to give up their life for the second time. Krishna was the life and soul of the Brajavasis. Irrespective of the age of the person, they always loved Krishna more than anything else. And now they are seeing Krishna just laying motionless. He was not moving, he was not fighting, he was just hanging there. So they begin to lament for their dear friend. And again, the boys fell unconscious. They couldn't tolerate the sight of Krishna being in the grips of Kaliya. The cows and the calves were mooing in distress, calling out to the Lord. And they became stunned with fear. They wanted to cry, but the cows and calves were too shocked to shed tears. And then there were fearful omens. The earth was tremoring. Stars were falling. from the sky. And immediately the Vrajavasis, Nanda Maharaj, Mother Yashoda thought, something must be wrong. Today, Krishna has gone out without the protection of Balaram. Usually, Lord Balaram would accompany Krishna anywhere and everywhere because Mother Yashoda had extracted a promise from him that he would always protect his brother like your eyelids protect the eyes. But that day was Balaram's appearance day, so his mother said, you're not going anywhere. We're going to celebrate your birthday. I'm going to give you a nice bath and we will have a birthday party for you. So Balaram was not there. But anyway, all the Vrajavasis were searching for Krishna. How did they find Krishna? They saw footprints on the sand. But then there are so many footprints. How do they know which is Krishna's? Krishna has certain markings on the soles of his feet. And every time Krishna's soft lotus feet would touch the soft sands, they would leave an imprint on the sand. If you go to Vrindavan, there is a place called, I think it's Ramanareti. The sand is so soft there. It is said that all the cows decided, our dear Lord Krishna, nothing should hurt him. His lotus feet are the most important things to us. They are worshipable to us. Therefore, all the hard stones and grime, everything was powdered to soft sand so that Krishna, whenever he would walk on Rajabhumi, his feet would not be hurt. That was the mood of the cows in Rajabhumi. Keep in mind, none of them knew that the Krishna was the Supreme Lord. At that time, they were just distraught seeing Krishna. So Nanda Maharaj and all the Vrajavasis finally find Krishna, and what scene are they seeing? Krishna is lying motionless in the coils of Kaliya. Definitely they thought he was gone. They didn't know that he was the Supreme Lord. So everybody was there, all the children, all the women, all the elderly people. And Nanda Maharaj rushed into the lake, tried to, because he wanted to rescue his son himself. And Lord Balaram, knowing what the Lord was about to do, he prevents them from stepping into the lake. So Krishna is thinking, okay, my parents have come, all the Vrajavasis are here, I'm going to put on a nice show for them. So Krishna thought, okay, I've been lying motionless for a long time. Let me not, cause any more distress to my dear devotees. They were filled with anguish and confusion. What are they supposed to do? I mean, imagine all the gopis, all the young gopis. They were so attached to the Lord. Suddenly they saw their entire life was empty without Krishna. Even the elderly gopis felt sorrow. And they had to force Yashoda Mai from not entering the lake. So much so, Mother Yashoda couldn't bear the thought anymore that she had lost her son. She becomes unconscious. And everybody was shell-shocked. So, for a little longer, Krishna remains in the coils of Kaliya, imitating as if he was a normal human being. But because of the acute distress that the Vrajavasis were facing, because of their love for him, he was their only shelter. He was their only goal in life. He decides, okay, I need to stop this drama and put on a nice dance show for them. So the Lord starts expanding his body, forcing Kalia to release him. Although the Lord stayed the same size, through his mystic power, Kalia felt like as if the Lord was expanding bigger and bigger and bigger. And when the Lord got free from him, Kalia gets angry and tries attacking the Lord with every one of his hoods. So Kalia is said to have 1,000 hoods. Of the 1,000 hoods, 101 were prominent. And he was looking at the Lord with 1,000 hoods. Imagine. What darshan. So, but then he was looking at the Lord with envy, not with love. So Krishna very playfully circles around Kalia. Every time Kalia would try to grab him, Krishna would escape. So now Krishna climbs onto the hoods of Kalia and begins to dance. And an extraordinary dance performance. When Lord Shiva dances to bring an end to this cosmos, he dances on a flat surface that does not move. Here the stage is moving. And what stage? 1,000 stages, 1,000 heads. So Lord Shiva came there, he was taking notes. How is the Lord doing this? The hoods are slippery. They are constantly moving. So Shukadev Goswami says all the devatas came to witness this pastime. The Gandharvas, the Siddhas, the sages, the Charanas, the wives of the demigods. They wanted to see the Lord perform his dance. And what did they do? The devatas and all of the Gandharvas and others, they started playing the instruments, encouraging the Lord. Yes, continue to dance. They were singing. They were showering flowers on the Lord. They were glorifying the Lord. And so Lord Krishna would put his lotus foot on each one of Kaliya's heads and smash it. Then as Kaliya, it is said that the weight of the Lord was larger than the weight of the entire cosmos. That's how heavy the Lord felt to Kaliya. So as the Lord kept dancing, more of the poison would come out of Kaliya. Until all the poison had come out and Kaliya starts spitting blood. At that time, the Nagapatis come. So we'll go to the Srimad Bhagavatam to read these beautiful prayers of the Nagapatis. So we'll come to Shloka number 31. This is a slightly long chapter, so we're not going to read all the shlokas. So when Kaliya's wives saw how the serpent had become so fatigued from the excessive weight of Lord Krishna, who carries the entire universe in his abdomen, and how Kaliya's umbrella-like hoods had been shattered by the striking of Krishna's heels, they felt great distress. With their clothing, ornaments, and hair scattered in disarray, they then approached the eternal personality of Godhead. Their minds very much disturbed, those saintly ladies placed their children before them and then bowed down to the Lord of all creatures, laying their bodies flat upon the ground. They desired the liberation of their sinful husband and the shelter of the Supreme Lord, the giver of ultimate shelter, and thus they folded their hands in supplication and approached him. How did the Nagapatnis know that this was the Supreme Lord? because they were his devotees. So they offered their obeisances. They wanted two things. They did not want the Lord to kill their husband because he is very close to death. At the same time, they were seeking the shelter and protection of the Lord. And so they began their prayers. The wives of the Kaliya serpent said, "The punishment this offender has been subjected to is certainly just." They're calling Kaliya an offender. And they're calling the Lord's punishment of their husband very just. After all, you have incarnated within this world to curb down envious and cruel persons. You are so impartial that you look equally upon your enemies and your own sons. For when you impose a punishment on a living being, you know it to be for his ultimate benefit. So, how do the wives know philosophy? Devotees of the Lord know when the Lord sends difficult times their way, that is also for our benefit only. So, in that sense, nothing is a punishment, everything is a benediction. They are saying, "My dear Lord, actually, why do you come down? You come down to curb the envious and cruel persons, and we agree our husband is envious and cruel. But you are not a partial God, you are impartial. If you touch your so called enemies, you benedict them. Actually, everybody is your child, therefore, you don't look upon anybody as your enemy. Because even Kaliya is the Lord's son." So anything the Lord does with us is actually for our own good. So sometimes, as parents, I'm sure many parents who have young children, sometimes the parent has to chastise the child. But they're not chastising because they enjoy chastising. They punish the child because they want the child to learn. So when the Lord punishes you, he wants you to learn. So there is a lesson in everything that happens to us in our personal lives. We can ask ourselves, what is it that the Lord wants me to do? Of course, the first thing the Lord wants you to do is to get even more attached to him. Tighten your grip on his lotus feet. Don't let go. What you have done here is actually mercy for us, since the punishment you give to the wicked certainly drives away all their contamination. When the Lord punishes you, it removes your poison. So when the poison is removed, then you're ready to become a devotee of the Lord. So how did the Nagapatis know this? The Lord was apparently punishing Kaliya, but in the process of dancing on Kaliya's hoods, he removed all the poison. Indeed, because this conditioned soul, our husband, is so sinful that he has assumed the body of a serpent, your anger toward him is obviously to be understood as your mercy. They're telling the Lord, even when you're angry, you're benedicting us. It's actually your mercy. They are saying it, you are not just being merciful to our husband. By removing the poison from our husband, you are being merciful to us. We now have a husband who's devoid of poison. And then they are thoroughly astounded how did the Lord and why did the Lord benedict their husband who was not a devotee? So they are asking the Lord, did our husband carefully perform austerities in the previous life with his mind free of pride and full of respect for others? Is that why you are pleased with him? Or did he, in some previous existence, carefully execute religious duties with compassion for all living beings? And is that why you, the life of all living beings, are now satisfied with him? So they're wondering, how could it be possible? We have witnessed how her husband conducts himself, but is there a chance that he did something good in his previous lifetime? That's why you have come? So they're telling the Lord, oh Lord, we do not know how the serpent Kaliya has attained this great opportunity of being touched by the dust of your lotus feet. You see, great rishis, devatas are always hankering just to get darshan of the lotus feet of the Lord. The lotus feet of the Lord is the dearmost possession of the devotees. And the Lord is benedicting someone who's not his devotee. For this end, the goddess of fortune performed austerities for centuries, giving up all other desires and observing austere vows. The Nagapatnis are saying, even Lakshmi Devi, just to have the opportunity of serving the lotus feet of Lord Narayana, she performed so many austerities for so many centuries. She had to give up all material desires and only be focused on serving the lotus feet of the Lord. When Lakshmi Devi performed so many austerities, we can't believe that Kaliya could have done that in any one of his lifetimes. And yet, your lotus feet has touched his head. Not just the dust, the lotus feet itself has left an imprint on Kaliya's hoods. This, my dear devotees, is called the Lord's causeless mercy. When you don't deserve to have the Lord in your personal life, and yet the Lord comes into your life, you can understand that you have received the causeless mercy of the Lord, which means you didn't do anything to deserve chanting the holy names of the Lord. You didn't do anything in your previous life to hear Srimad Bhagavatam as we are hearing today. Simply the Lord has selected you and given you his mercy for no reason. Actually, this is the mood of devotees. Devotees always accept that they didn't do anything. We are actually rascals. We don't deserve to be devotees of the Lord. Yet somehow or the other, Krishna has selected a few jivatmas and told them, yes, chant my names, hear about me, worship me, serve my devotees. So if an envious and greedy person like Kaliya simply by the Lord touching his hoods has removed his poison, what can we say about sincere devotees who really want to chant the holy names of the Lord, who really want to study the Bhagavad Gita, who really want to preach, who really want to serve the Lord and his devotees? What could be their position? This 37th shloka is a very famous shloka. So I will recite it and then we'll read the translation. Nanakaprishtham na cha sarvabhaumam na paramesthyam na rasadhipatyam Na yoga siddhira punarbhavam va vanchanti yat padarajah prapanna. So the wives are telling the Lord, those who have attained the dust of your lotus feet never hanker for the kingship of heaven, limitless sovereignty, the position of Brahma, or rulership over the earth. They are not interested even in the perfections of yoga or in liberation itself. The Nagapatnis are saying, anybody who has received this benediction from the Lord, what happens to them? They have zero interest in power, wealth, supremacy, control, titles. They don't even want mystic siddhis. They don't even want moksha. In the Vaishnava tradition, even moksha is considered to be a material desire because you're asking the Lord to set you free from this jail. And a genuine devotee will not ask the Lord for anything except, please make sure I always have an opportunity to serve you. My dear Lord, I may forget you, but please you don't forget me. My dear Lord, I may move away from devotees, but however hard I may try to distance myself from devotees, please make sure that I'm always in their embrace. Because I know if I put a distance between the devotees and myself, I'm going to forget you. So, this is the mood of genuine devotees. They do not ask the Lord for anything but service. An opportunity to serve the Lord is the greatest benediction one can ask for. So, when we pray to the Lord every day, we should beg for His mercy for ourselves, for our family members, to somehow or the other engage us in His service. The Hare Krishna Mahamantra, the translation of the mantra is, O my dear Radharani, because you are the greatest devotee of the Lord, you are 24/7 serving the Lord. Please, somehow or the other, engage us also in the service of Krishna, Rama. Rama is another name of Krishna. So every time we're chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, we're actually asking Srimati Radharani to engage us also. Let us become her maid servants, assist her in her services to her Lord. Actually, that is the mood of the gopis in Vrindavan. All they do is assist Radharani and Krishna in their pastimes. So the Nagapatnis say, O Lord, although this Kaliya, the king of the serpents, has taken birth in the mode of ignorance and is controlled by anger, he has achieved that which is difficult for others to achieve. Imagine, just by the Lord dancing on his hoods, from Tamo Gun, Kaliya has come to Sattva Gun in just a matter of few hours. It is said that this dance went on for a few hours, not a few minutes. And they are saying it is so difficult for others to achieve this stature. Embodied souls who are full of desires and others wandering in the cycle of birth and death can have all benedictions manifested before their eyes simply by receiving the dust of your lotus feet. And from here on, the Nagapatnis will begin to glorify the Lord and repeatedly offer their obeisances to God. They are going to talk about the Lord's position. They are going to talk about the Lord's mood. They are going to talk about how the Lord is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. So, how did the Nagapatnis know all of this? They are actually speaking Bhagavad Gita. They are talking about the difference between the soul and the super soul. They are talking about bhakti. They even seem to know about the Chaturvyuha. They said, we offer our obeisances to Lord Krishna and Lord Rama, the sons of Vasudeva, and to Lord Pradyumna and Lord Aniruddha. We offer our respectful obeisances unto the master of all the saintly devotees of Vishnu. You are the source of everything material and spiritual. You are the master of the senses. You are Hrishikesha. So, like this, they are praying to the Lord for many, many shlokas until they make their request. So, in the 51st shloka, they say, at least once a master should tolerate an offense committed by his child or subject. O supreme peaceful soul, you should therefore forgive our foolish husband who did not understand who you are. So they are telling the Lord, we are your servants, you are our master. Sometimes servants make mistakes, but the master normally forgives. So they're telling the Lord, please be merciful and forgive. Because he didn't know, he didn't recognize you. And they say, O Supreme Lord, please be merciful. It is proper for the saintly to feel compassion for women like us. They are playing the woman card. They're saying, we're all women. And please shower your mercy on us. Please be merciful. This serpent is about to give up his life. Please give us back our husband, who is our life and soul. So you would think the Nagapatnis would say, yeah, go ahead, do what you want with him. But what is the mood of the Nagapatnis? They want their husband and they want that opportunity to continue to serve him. And then they ask the Lord, you please tell us what is it that we should do. Now please tell us, your maid servants, what we should do. Certainly anyone who faithfully executes your order is automatically freed from all fear. So the Nagapatnis are saying anybody who is an obedient servant of the Lord, they will be fearless. They will not worry. Whatever action the Lord takes, they will accept it. Is Kalia going to lose his life or is he going to be restored? So Shukadev Goswami tells Parikshit Maharaj, thus praised by the Nagapatnis, the Supreme Personality of Godhead released the serpent Kalia, who had fallen unconscious, his head battered by the striking of the Lord's lotus feet. So the Lord responds to the prayer of the Nagapatnis and releases their husband. Now from here, Kalia will come to his senses. And he will also begin to glorify the Lord. He'll finally recognize that this is Narayana himself. And he will tell the Lord, you know what, after all, I'm in the body of a snake. I was built to be envious, ignorant, and constantly angry. And he tells the Lord, it is so difficult. Once you're used to behaving in a certain way, it's very difficult to change one's conduct. And so now it is Kaliya's turn to glorify the Lord. He tells him, you're the Supreme Lord, we are all your servants. You know, by nature, serpents are always enraged. We are deluded by your Maya potency. We need your help to give up this illusion. Since you're omniscient, you already know all of this. But you can free us up from this illusion. And then Kaliya says, my dear Lord, Whatever you think is proper, you arrange that for us. So if you want to punish, punish. If you want to be merciful, please be merciful. At that time, the Lord tells Kalia, you cannot stay here anymore. You have to go into the oceans, take your family with you, take your wives, your children, relatives, friends, because I want this river to be enjoyed by my cows and the Brajavasis. And then the Lord gives a benediction, 2 benedictions. Falashruti, we call it, no? The Lord Himself is giving it in this chapter. The Lord says, if a mortal being attentively remembers my command to you to leave Vrindavana and go to the ocean, and narrates this account at sunrise and sunset, he will never be afraid of you. So the first benediction the Lord is giving is, whoever is hearing and or narrating this pastime at sunrise and sunset, they will have no fear for serpents. And then in the next shloka, the Lord gives one more benediction. If one bathes in this place of my pastimes and offers the water of this lake to the demigods and other worshipable personalities, or if one observes a fast and duly worships and remembers me, he is sure to become free from all sinful reactions. So we should make a plan to go to Vrindavan, take a dip in the Yamuna, fast, and then take a dip in the Yamuna. The Lord says all of your sins will be wiped out. So you may think Garuda and Kalia are natural enemies. So why would Kalia be okay with going back into the ocean? So the Lord says, don't worry. When Garuda sees my lotus footprints on your hoods, he will recognize and he will not try to eat you. So ultimate protection. The Lord gives Kalia his life back and furthermore protects him by leaving his lotus footprints on his head. So now Kalia and the wives worship the Lord and they leave the lake and head towards the ocean. So how to understand the Lord? Very difficult to understand who the Supreme Lord is. Which is why today's chapter is called Ishwara. So let's come to the slides now. It's very difficult to understand who the Lord is and how he functions and what his mood is and how he operates. These are all very difficult things for us to understand. But hopefully with today's chapter on Ishwara, we get to know a little bit about God. So God cannot be understood. Even great rishis do not understand it. So what to speak of mere mortals like us? How can we understand the Supreme? So today's topic is Ishwara. The word Ishwara means controller. We've heard of Parameshwara, Jagadishwara. Normally when we say Ishwara, we think of Lord Shiva. But Lord Shiva himself worships Lord Vishnu because he knows that Lord Vishnu is the topmost. So when we say Jagadishwara, Parameshwara, we're referring to Lord Krishna. But even though we are all sent to this jail for being disobedient, Krishna sends us a surrogate mother and father in the form of Lord Shiva and Parvati Devi. And that's why we worship Lord Shiva and Parvati Devi so much as our parents, because they are standing, they are substituting for the Lord. So before we begin, let's offer our most humble obeisances to His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We'll also recite the Pranati Mantra. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamin iti namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Deshataya. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You and I shouldn't say probably, you and I believe in God. That's why we are here, trying to understand a little bit about the Bhagavad Gita. So definitely the Lord is a very famous personality. I don't think we will ask the question, does God really exist? But then there are some people who do not believe in God. So how do you explain to them that God does exist? What is the meaning of the word Bhagavan? Can you really see with your physical eyes the Supreme Lord? Or do you need a special set of eyes to see the Lord, to experience the Lord in your life? How do you get to know about the Supreme Lord? What are the different ways you can acquire knowledge, not just of material things, but also of the Supreme Lord? What is the topmost way in which we can acquire this knowledge about the Supreme Lord, where we can hear and learn about the Supreme Lord? The Lord has always said that He is our Father and He's left behind the manual. That manual is our mother. So the Vedas are considered to be our mother because they can guide you, they can answer all your questions that you have. So the Lord is a famous personality amongst the devotee community as well as amongst those who don't believe, because we are all preoccupied with discussing the Lord. Some of us discuss Him and glorify Him, and some of us discuss Him in a manner to reject Him. So both is true. So both are preoccupied with talking about the Lord. So even the non-believers discuss the Lord. They may say things like God is partial. Look at all the suffering in the world and He doesn't do anything about it. He's just sitting there and witnessing it silently. That means He must be a bad person. Therefore, I don't need Him in my life. Why should I bow down to Him? Anyway, I'm managing things on my own. Thank you very much. I don't need anybody's help. And then some people say, I want proof. You give me proof, then I will start worshipping. Until I see God myself, why should I believe? And then the worst kind of offenders who say, I am God. And some people say, all of us are God. It's just that we've forgotten that we're God. So there is this famous philosopher by the name Epicurus. He lives in, I think, 300 BC, if I'm not mistaken. So before Christ. There are many great Greek philosophers, and he happens to be one of them. And he propagated the movement called Epicureanism, which means simple living and high thinking. So he said people who are like-minded should come together, live a simple life, and talk about what is really important in life. Help each other develop good qualities. While he didn't propagate openly the worship of the Lord, he was propagating that everybody should at least be practicing sattvagun to come to the sattvagun stage. But at the same time, some of the questions that he is asked are very thought-provoking questions. Now, by looking at this specific set of 4 questions, you may reach the conclusion that God doesn't exist. But that was not the import behind these questions. But nevertheless, in case others argue with you, putting forth their rationale as to why they don't believe in God, you can hopefully put yourself in a position to answer them definitively. So the 4 questions that Epicurus asks is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Which means He can prevent evil, but is not able to prevent it, which means he wants to prevent evil, but he does not have the capacity to prevent evil. If that is true, then he's not omnipotent, right? The word omnipotent means all powerful. The Lord can do anything he wants. He can do anything he wants. He's Swarat. He's completely independent of you and me. So the first question is, can the Lord do something about evil? But somehow or the other, he does not have the power to do anything about evil. In that case, you cannot accept that the Lord is omnipotent. Now the question is reversed. Is he able to do something about evil, but he's not willing to do it? Which means the Lord has the power to prevent evil, but he does not step in and act. That means he must be a malevolent God. Malevolent means terrible. The third question is he able to prevent evil and he is willing to prevent evil? If he can do both, then where did evil come from? If God exists, how can evil also simultaneously exist? If the Lord is omnipotent and if the Lord is merciful, why is he allowing evil to exist? Actually, why did evil take birth at all? That's the question. And the final question is, he's not able to prevent evil and he's not willing to prevent evil, then why should we call him God? Why should we worship? So the proper answer to these questions, these are rhetorical questions, thought-provoking questions. The proper answer to these questions is, the Lord did not create evil, but he allows it to exist because it is the jivatmas that are misusing the independence and free will given by the Lord. The Lord is going to certainly curtail that jivatma's independence in the future, but nevertheless, the Lord never deprives the jivatma of free will. So imagine in our personal lives, let us say instinctively, something small I will take as an example. Let's say I'm driving early in the morning, I want to run a red light. How will the Lord stop me? Either the car has to die or I have to faint or something, right? So the car comes to a complete halt. So if the Lord interferes in everyone's life, you would not be happy. You would not be happy. If a parent was to dictate every single activity of their child, the child would learn to hate the parents. So just as parents give the children certain amount of freedom to exercise, but the more the child becomes disobedient and disruptive, the more the parent may be willing to curb their freedom. The Lord operates in the same way, or rather I should say parents are operating the way the Lord operates, right? Because otherwise you will have no reason to love the Lord. If the Lord were to personally interfere in every sinful thing that is happening, if he were to personally interfere and end the wars and so many objectionable things that are happening, then you will begin to dislike the Lord and hate him. But how do you know that the Lord actually exists? Because everything comes from the Lord. Our intelligence comes from the Lord. Our creative power comes from the Lord. Our talent comes from the Lord. All of our potencies come from the Lord, and the Lord explains this clearly in the Bhagavad Gita. So even though we have these great people like Leonardo da Vinci and Shah Jahan and Thomas Alva Edison, who are known for their inventions or their creativity, They didn't get it on their own. The Lord gave it to them as a gift. Similarly, so many great civilizations have come and gone. The Egyptian civilization, the Greek civilization, the Roman civilization. Where are they today? They're not there today, but they've left behind some wonderful monuments like the Sphinx and the Parthenon and the Colosseum. Even anything that we want to build, we are using the materials given to us by the Lord to create it. Because Prabhupada says a man cannot even create, even a grain of rice, he cannot create in a factory. But he can take that grain of rice, take it to the factory, and create all kinds of wonderful things out of it. Man cannot create on his own. Therefore, every time the man creates and invents, it is a gift from the Lord. So, this is Isaac Newton, who says, I believe the more I study science, the more I believe in God. And there is this particular incident that happens between Isaac Newton and his another physicist friend who was an atheist who did not believe in God. And when they would have conversations, this atheist friend would say, everything that we see is just an accident. It is just something came out of matter. Life has come out of matter. And there is no creator behind this universe. That was the atheist's philosophy. So Newton has one of his other friends create a replica of the Milky Way galaxy in such a fashion that the planets are moving around in their respective orbits. And when his atheist friend visits him and he sees this beautiful miniature replica of the Milky Way, he asks Newton, who constructed this beautiful specimen of the replica of the Milky Way? And Newton says, no one. And they go back and forth, and Newton keeps saying, no one, nobody created this, nobody created this. Finally, the friend gets exasperated, and the atheist says, come on, you expect me to believe that nobody created this? It didn't just land here out of nowhere. Somebody took the time, effort, intelligence, energy to create this mini replica. Tell me who it is. At that time, the Newton tells his friend, this replica is a mere imitation of the real thing. But I am not able to convince you that this toy does not have a designer and a maker. But you are convinced that the real thing does not have a designer and a maker. So he was telling his friend, you are not willing to believe that this toy was created by no one. But yet you believe that the real thing was not created by anyone. It's an accident. So now tell me, by what sort of reasoning do you reach such an incongruous conclusion? This is a perfect way to defeat an atheist. Because they have some weird beliefs. But then if you try to convince them that on this earth, nobody created the skyscraper building, it just came out of nowhere, they will not believe you. They'll say, are you mad or what? Because they can see with their eyes the skyscraper building going up. But yet they are not willing to believe that there is a God, there is an intelligent design, there is a creator. Doesn't make sense. Does not make sense. So what is the meaning of the word Bhagavan? Parashara Muni, who is the father of Srila Vedavyas, defines Bhagavan as someone who possesses 6 opulences in full or unlimitedly. What are those 6 opulences? That the Lord is the most powerful, He's the most knowledgeable, He's the most beautiful, He's the most famous, He's the most wealthy, and yet He is renounced. When you and I create something, and if somebody comes and touches it or destroys it or disturbs it, we would be deeply upset. We would think, hey, I spent time and energy constructing that thing. How can you be so careless? How could you be so cruel? But the Lord creates this beautiful cosmos and lets us play with it any which way we want. He's not attached to his creation. We are very attached to what we create. No? We don't recognize the Lord's hand in all of creation. So, what kind of eyes do you really need to see the Lord? One needs to develop the spiritual vision, and that spiritual vision is developed by hearing about the Lord, by reading about the Lord, by discussing about the Lord, by obeying what the Lord has asked us to do in this life. Then slowly we will develop this jnana chakshu. Through the eyes of knowledge, we will see the Lord. So our physical eyes, we may not be able to see them. Just like the Shastra says, when 6 blind men are touching different parts of the elephant's body, they are focused on that body part and they're describing the entire elephant using only one single body part. Whether it's the leg that is just like a tree, or whether it's a trunk that's just like a snake, they cannot see the whole thing. So even our eyes are deceitful, even when we have vision. What to speak when we don't have vision and we are blind? So therefore, logic does not work to help you understand who the Lord is. Because the Shastras say every human being has 4 defects. The first defect is that we have a tendency to commit mistakes. None of us is perfect. We are subject to illusion. We accept truth as untruth and untruth as truth sometimes. In the sense that we get cheated. The other thing is we have a tendency to cheat ourselves. And the last aspect is that none of our senses are perfect. The sun looks like a small disk to us. But in reality, the sun is much, much larger than the earth, many million times larger than the earth. So if we have a tendency to make mistakes, our senses are imperfect, and we are always subject to illusion. One of that illusion is that we accept that we are this body, and we have a tendency to cheat ourselves. Then how can, with these 4 defects, how can we understand who's the Supreme Lord? Therefore, there must be another way to understand who's the Lord. And the 3 ways in which a human being normally learns is through direct perception, which is called pratyaksha pramana, then through experiences, which is called anumana pramana, and then through shabda pramana, where you're actually hearing from a bona fide authority. If you think about it, throughout your entire life, you have learnt through shabda pramana. Your mother has told you, this is a desk, this is the moon, this is your father, this is your brother, this is a tulsi plant, this is the Lord. When you go to school, your teachers are teaching you orally. 2 plus 2 is 4. So everything that you've learned in life, you have learned through Shabda Pramana. But when you learned it from a bona fide authority, you will not challenge it. You never challenged your mother when your mother said, this is your father. You never challenged your school teacher when your teacher said 2 plus 2 is 4. Why? Because you trusted them. In the material world, we have a process by which you can qualify yourself to teach. So even when it comes to spiritual matter, there are qualified teachers that you have to approach. If you approach anybody and everybody, you will get cheated. So Shabda Pramanam is first thing you have to make sure that they have the qualification. And a qualified guru will always tell you, Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Bow down to him, become his devotee, serve him nicely. A qualified guru will never tell you, I will give you a mantra and it will solve all your problems. And by the way, you are God, you just don't know it. A qualified guru will always take you to Krishna because a qualified guru is anxious to deliver another lost soul back to their Supreme Father. So we know that seeing is not always believing. believing. And we know that experiences in life are not the only way in which you learn. There are things that are far beyond a human experience. So when you dwell on the spiritual platform, there are spiritual experiences that cannot be explained. So Srila Prabhupada says we can speculate for many births, for many years, and yet not be able to understand the ultimate goal of life. Therefore, the Shastras all advise that we search out a bona fide Guru. So the Shabda Pramana is the most authentic way to learn, but you have to go through a bona fide Guru Parampara system. So just as Lord Krishna or Lord Vishnu reveals to Lord Brahma all about who he is, who the Lord is, and the Vedic scriptures, Brahma then teaches it to his son Narada Muni. Narada Muni teaches it to his disciple Vyasadeva, and from there the parampara has continued to Madhvacharya and come to Srila Prabhupada. So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Evam parampara praptam imam raja rashayo viduhu. Krishna is telling Arjuna in those days, this divine knowledge was received even by the kings, because the kings are supposed to be the uh, human representatives of the Lord. The kings don't own the land. In olden days, the land, everything was in the Lord's name. The king was simply a servant of the Lord, and on behalf of the Lord, he was conducting his kingdom. That is actually the proper way. The Vedic way of governance is you do everything on behalf of the Lord. That's the kind of politicians we really need. So, but as we said, the scriptures are our mother. So, what is the source of knowledge? One is the scriptures. So, Guru, Sadhu Sangha, and Shastra. These are the three ways in which we learn. We learn among a community of devotees, we learn from Guru, and we learn from Shastra. So, there is only one God. There cannot be multiple gods. How can there be multiple gods? If everything was created by one person, how can there be multiple peoples? There can only be one God, and that God's name is Krishna. But God has many assistants to help him. Although he doesn't need the help, he can run the world, the entire cosmos, without anyone's help. But because there are certain jivatmas that are anxious to do service to the Lord benedicts them with service, and these are the devatas who are serving the Lord in various uh, capacities as department heads. So, if you want to know how the Lord looks, what are his various names, where does he live, what are his powers, how do you approach him, how do you understand him, why should you love and serve him, and how do you benefit by loving him and serving him? All of this are in the scriptures. God doesn't want you serving him only because you're supposed to. He wants you serving him because you love him. So the Lord expects you to use your free will to love and worship him, not because you're told to do it. Although the sadhana process actually begins because you're told to do it, eventually you will not care for the fact that you were told. You will just enjoy doing it, because once you experience serving the Lord with love, you will not want to give up that service. Just because you can't see the air doesn't mean you stop breathing. And just because you can't see God doesn't mean you stop believing. Many institutions, including ISKCON, will ask for donations. God doesn't want to take your money. He just doesn't want your money to take you, which means the Lord is concerned if money corrupts us. The more money that we have, the more we may think we are the master, and the less we need God in our life. So money, wealth, intelligence, power, all of this can corrupt us. If we understand that everything is a gift from the Lord, then we will use it first in the service of the Lord. That's why religious institutions ask for donation. So a genuine institution will use donations back in the service of the Lord and in service of society. God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the call. Which means we may think, I'm not pure, I'm not ready, I'm evil. How can I start worshipping the Lord? Because to worship the Lord, you have to be pure. Actually, by worshipping the Lord, you will receive that purity from God Himself. So it's not the Lord is saying, you become pure, then I will come into your life, then I will help you. No. The Lord is saying, you first serve me, I myself will help you become pure. Therefore, the Lord qualifies you. The good qualities that you get as a devotee is actually coming from the Lord to you. The Lord is reciprocating with you. So God doesn't expect us to solve all the world's problem. He expects us not to create them. The irony is that while God doesn't need us but still wants us, we desperately need God but don't really want Him most of the time. So we have a tendency only to approach the Lord when we are in trouble. That's not love. You have to express, if you love someone, you express your love to them on a daily basis. Whether it's good times or bad times, you have to express your love to the Lord every day. Not just knock on His door saying, can you help me? Then you're treating Him like a business person. The most important thing that we need to understand today is, even though the Lord is the supreme controller, He is not the sole controller. Meaning, He has given us limited free will. Within that limited free will, we can choose to make whatever decisions we want, including making a decision to be an atheist. The Lord loves you so much, He even gives you the freedom to reject Him. But the Lord loves you so much, even after you have rejected Him, He still gives you air to breathe, nice sunshine, nice job, nice family. Even after we reject the Lord doesn't take His revenge on you. Can you imagine how much love the Lord has for all of us? As a matter of fact, Prabhupada says that the Lord is more anxious to get us back than we are anxious to go back to Him. So, this is Ishwara.